In the special meeting of the Committee of the Whole. A motion?
Motion's on the floor.
A second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned.
Before we open up the cow. Everybody here? Just wanted to apologize to everybody in the audience this evening. We had a lot of business to take care of in executive session, and we appreciate the fact that you held on 20 or 31 minutes longer than what was originally posted. So, Mr. Yonker, if you'd like to continue with the business. Oh, Mr. Pino is absent.
We get started anyway. I'll call the meeting to order. We get a roll call for the committee meeting, please.
Trustee Yonker?
Here.
Trustee Panito?
Here.
Trustee Berg? Here. Trustee Brady?
Here.
Trustee Glatz?
Here.
Trustee Mangan?
Here.
Number two, do we have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meetings of the Committee of the Whole, meeting held on April 11th, 2017?
So moved. Second.
I'll second that. I believe that I was one present for that meeting.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Number three, discuss adding one Class O liquor license, Sound Growler, 8201 183rd Street, Suite P. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Yonker. So before you this evening, we have I believe we have the owners of Sound Growler are present. There you go, sir. So they're requesting, as it's noted, a Class O liquor license, which I believe is to, and my executive was probably a little bit further into this than I am, is for the brewing and selling of alcoholic beverage, if I remember correctly. So the village currently has 2 of these Class O licenses in place. This will be adding one to our license. Yes, petitioners, if you'd like to step forward, introduce yourself. Sure. It's my understanding you're already in construction, so this will be adding another brewery to Tinley Park along the line of fabulous breweries. So, sir,
Yeah.
if you'd like to introduce yourself and.
Yeah, Tinley Park is becoming quite the place for breweries. I heard Bang & Gavel is going to join Tinley Park here soon, so that's fantastic news. But yeah, my name is Arturo Lamas. I am the founder of Sound Growler Brewing Company. Just a little information about our company. So Sound Growler Brewing Company specializes in the production of American-style hop-forward beer. Our location is 5,000 square feet and is located at 8201 183rd Street here in Tinley Park. Our facility has a 15-barrel brew house, 10 fermentation tanks, a full kitchen, and seating for patrons. Our kitchen will focus on Mexican-style small plates that will pair well with our beers. We're currently under construction and expect to open early summer. We believe we have the right team for this venture. Our brewer is from Lagunitas Brewing Company, and our taproom manager is from Texas Roadhouse. We have also invested heavily in the quality of our beer and the efficiency of our systems. As always, I'm available to further discuss Sound Growler Brewing Company and truly look forward to our relationship with the village of Tinley Park. Thank you.
Thank you, Arturo. Paula, is there anything from the community development side that's outstanding in reference to permitting, planning, zoning, anything like that? Can you apprise the board
Not
of?
this time.
No. Did they require any special zoning?
I think we went, I'm trying to recall, if we went through a special use, I wish my memory.
Oh, we did not.
No?
No, because the restaurant portion is
Yeah,
allowed.
the biggest issue was the restaurant, that's what it
Okay.
was. Because a restaurant is allowed, but not a tavern's allowed
Yeah.
in the M1. So if we did it similarly to some of the other ones where they have a restaurant use. And then we had some issues with capacity, and the fire department reviewed that, and that all got resolved as well.
And sir, is this your first establishment? Or do you have any other brewery?
No, this is my first brewery. So, I'm the vice president of manufacturing for Skyline Furniture Manufacturing in Thornton, Illinois. So we have 350 employees. So kind of what I do is I manage people. I bring teams together, and that's what I did for Sound Growler. So brought in a big-time brewer from Lagunitas Brewing Company and a big-time manager from Texas Roadhouse.
Very good. Counselor, is there anything you'd like to give the board any updates on any licensing for liquor?
Yeah, maybe it's probably a good idea to just briefly tell you about the process that's set up for liquor licensing here. So as you know, so the mayor, as he is in Tinley Park and every other municipality in Illinois. The mayor is the local liquor commissioner. So it's the mayor's job to process the applications, make sure the applicants ask them for the right classification. As you see here, they're looking for a Class O. If you ever want to fall asleep and bore yourself, crack open our code book and you can read all the various classifications, A through Z, and they're all, some are restaurant with bar, some are restaurant no bar, some are, everything you can imagine. And it's actually, we'll probably be looking to clean some of that up in the near future. But the way this works is your village keeps, or at least attempts to keep, all classifications at their maximum number. So I think, as the mayor mentioned, you have 2 Class O liquor licenses town. Currently on your books, that's all it says that you can give out. So your job as the board, you have to vote to increase that number. So that's why this comes before you. So you will get a chance. I think they've been doing it like this for some time. They'll come in, the less formal committee of the whole session here. They'll give you a briefing, and then normally you'll see this request on the next agenda. And again, that's what you'll be asked to vote on. You'll be asked to increase, that's the technical aspect. You'll ask me to increase the number of Class O liquor licenses that can be issued in the village. And obviously, Sound Growler would, the mayor would approve that license for Sound Growler. So that's kind of your role. So you set the number. The mayor, the local liquor commissioner, kind of handles the liquor processing, but you set the number in town. And I always recommend, I think it's a great strategy to, keep that number capped. It's your chance to, vet these things and take a look at them, and ultimately you can vote to increase the number, or you can vote not to increase the number. That's your decision. So one other note, as you'll see in here what we did a while back, this is a Class O. If you ever see a V next to one of the letters, you'll see AV, BV, CV, DV, anything like that. If you see the V, that means they're requesting video gaming with that. If you do not see a V, they are not allowed to have video gaming. So here, there's no V. You guys don't plan on
No.
video gaming? Yeah. So just keep that in mind as well.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other questions from the board?
Mr. Mayor, I have a question. There's no plans for gaming in this? You're just looking for a straight liquor license?
Yeah, absolutely done. So, it just doesn't fit our culture. We're there to produce and distribute beer.
Very good. Thank you.
Anything else to the good of the order? No. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Yonker.
Number 4, discuss an intergovernmental agreement between the Village of Tinley Park and the State of Illinois for 191st Street in Harlem from Oak Park Avenue. Talk about that. Jennifer first.
Sure. The village has been successful in receiving South Bergen Mayor's and Managers Surface Transportation Funding for the improvement of the Harlem and 191st Street intersection, as well as the extension of 191st Street from Harlem to Oak Park Avenue. The project has been designed, permitted, and actually was bid on IDOT letting on April 28th. So the last process is for the village to agree to fund their percentage of construction and construction engineering, as well as authorize the construction engineering so that the project can move forward. The bids that were received through the federal state letting were, the low bidder was deconstruction. They've done work in the village before. The total cost of the project is $3.3 million for construction, of which the village is responsible for roughly $540,000, or 16%. We were successful in getting the state to participate in the improvements for Harlem Avenue, so they're going to kick in about 7%. We are asking at this point in time that the village waive first reading and approve these agreements and the resolution at the next board meeting. The reason being, IDOT had the agreement since December of 2016. They just approved them on April 20th, 5 months for approval, and they will not award the project without these agreements being in place. And they have 45 days to award, and they need time to review the signatures and log it into their system prior to officially awarding the project to low responsive bidder. I do have what the improvements will look like. I know this is new to a lot of the board, but basically we're talking about a signal upgrade at 191st and Harlem. There will be traffic signals at 191st and Oak Park Avenue. We will have dual left turn lanes from Harlem going to 191st Street traveling to Target. Dual lefts going to 191st and dedicated right turn lanes on both Harlem and 191st. So major intersection upgrade here, designed for 2040 traffic, and will help alleviate some of the issues that we have during council season.
I have a question. You said 540,000 was our contribution?
540 for the construction.
I'm looking at the resolution. I guess that's part of our agreement that they're looking for. I think it shows our contribution is 579, 364. Is that going to be
Right.
corrected?
Right, no, it's the construction is $3.2 million, the construction and engineering is $2 million, so the total cost of the project is 3.5, so it's 540 for the 20% or 16% match for construction and 20%, $40,000 for construction engineering.
So that's how it comes up just shy of 580. Okay.
579, 364.
Any other questions? Number 5, discuss Oak Lawn water issue. Dave?
Sure. Going to be doing a PowerPoint tonight, basically giving an overview of our regional water system. Before I do that, I know the village attorney would like to make a statement.
Yeah, just so everybody on the board's aware, my firm also represents the village of Oak Lawn. The village of Oak Lawn has special counsel on the water deal, and then your town, Tinley Park, along with some of the other customers down here, have their own counsel, so we don't represent you in this matter. So if we go through this presentation and things like that, you have legal questions, those aren't for me. So just to give you a heads up on that.
Appreciate the noting of that, councilors.
Yeah, okay. All right, so basically just the overview, I'm going to go through the purpose of the presentation, the project history and status, the original versus the current cost estimates, the effect on municipal customers and users, and the next steps. Giving you an overall update on the project, and kind of the major reason why we're here today is to explain some of the concerns for cost increases and scope changes, and address some of the delays in receiving information that we've requested, and discuss how we're going to move forward. So, the regional water history. Let me first of all just talk a little bit. We've actually purchased water. We've been actually purchasing water from Oak Lawn since 1972. We're actually one of 12 of their municipal customers, and we're actually one of 5 communities, which also includes Mokina, New Lenox, Oak Forest, and Orland Park. It's part of what's called their Southwest region. And Oak Lawn, in turn, has a separate agreement with Chicago, where they purchase their water from Chicago. So we are obviously buying this from Chicago, but Oak Lawn is essentially who we're buying it through. So we've had a long history of working with them, and the discussion about some inadequacies of the system has really been going on, from my understanding, for a couple decades. But in the year 2005 and then 2008, we really started to see some stresses on the system infrastructure. Those were drought and high flow years. We've seen some significant main breaks on the primary line that goes from Oak Lawn down Central Avenue. And Public Works shared our records that really in the last several years there's been one at least annually. Again, right now, so there's one major line that goes from Oak Lawn out to Tinley Park. And we recently had one occasion where we had 4 separate breaks at one time on the line. So one of the major components, and a lot of what you're going to hear about, is there's a lot of capital improvements that need to be made, but for us, the redundant line is certainly one of the most important. It's right now the only line that feeds our communities, and it was installed in the 1970s when, because you all know, Tinley Park and Mokina and New Lenox had much smaller population. So the community started working to develop a master plan for system improvements in 2008 or 09. All the communities were provide input. There was deficiencies that were identified, and there was improvements targeted necessary to meet the what's called the 2030 Illinois Department of Natural Resources flow allocation. This was estimates of what all the communities would need by 2030. That was developed about 10 years ago, but has really been kind of the target for a long time. So there was unanimous support to move forward with the master plan in 2009. This I know, and I maybe easy for the board to see, maybe a little bit challenging for the audience, but really what this outlines, it's kind of a map of the system and just talks about some of the major deficiencies. We've talked about the 50-year-old line with multiple breaks, no standby electrical tower, power, pressure deficits that has the potential to compromise fire flow, excessive pressure due to increased southern pressure zone demands, and as I mentioned earlier, inadequate capacity to meet the 2030 demands. Oops, I don't want to do that. Let's see now. Okay, you've seen all these new things, but I'm not getting the next slide here, so hold on. There we go. Okay. So the communities, basically, in terms of the review of the master plans, that was one of the larger projects in terms of determining where this redundant line would go to. And one of the initial discussions was running the line down Southwest Highway, and some of the other major roads would have been very expensive, frankly, a huge disruption to much of the area. So there was some conversation started a number of years ago with ComEd and the forest preserves about running it through, what we call greenfields. And so that's been a lot of the discussion. I will say, throughout this, we've had our operators and village managers involved in this process. So continuing on, basically, once the master plan was developed, the Southwest communities, the 5 that I mentioned before, what we began to do was really to negotiate a new contract with Oak Lawn based on these improvements and obviously the accompanying cost. The contract was actually signed in 2014. It's a 40-year agreement. Again, when you're investing in the type of capital improvements that you have for something like this, that's not unusual for really any type of utility agreement to go to that type of length.
The original agreement was also 40 years.
Was it? Okay. The North community also had some contract negotiations. So while they were doing that, engineering was developed for the project. We began some of the design work on the pump station and the transmission mains. Another one of these fancy charts. So this basically shows some of the original planned improvements and along the lines of where some of the deficiencies were. There was a pump station added in Oak Lawn, capacity and reliability improvements, and obviously a new 60-inch transmission main to provide for the future demands, and a redundant connection to Booster Station 2 and our interconnect, addition of some new pumps, and really to kind of address some of the deficiencies that were identified earlier. So some of the benefits, again, it meets our future needs. The new main, it provides backup power, addresses safety concerns, addresses the fire flow deficiencies, provides redundancy at average flow, and adds an asset management plan for existing infrastructure. This next one now takes what I showed you before and what some of the original cost estimates were. So, and how it came to being the cost estimates of $171 million, which is what was projected back in 2014. And these are 11 different projects. One is as little as a transmission main for $2.6 million, and then there was a larger transmission main that was estimated to be $32.4 million. All this, and I'll show, was estimated to be completed over a number of years. Wow. Sure there's only a skip this. Okay. So what I'd like to do now is kind of talk about where some of these bid packages are at. The Harker complex is just about done. This is actually one of the ones that's really going to benefit us in terms of power reliability. The Wright complex is near completion in about 9 months. And Booster Station 1 and 2, that's near completion, and that's going to help with our flow capability. So basically, you know, as we've been having these meetings, you know, one of the, there's been some concerns really related to the issue of cost that have come up. So I'm going to begin to talk about that now. And it recently kind of resulted in a meeting that all the managers and mayors from the communities had with Oak Lawn. But so essentially the most recent bid package, which is called bid package 4A, put us over the limit of 171 million and the contingency limit of 5%. According to the agreement, once that limit was reached, they would have to require executive consent, which Oak Lawn did request. The managers from the other community did have concerns about that, frankly, because obviously, we still have other projects to do on top of this. And so that essentially has been denied at this point, and it's actually an impasse pending approval of this bid package by all the communities. So I'm going to now talk a little bit about at the mayor's meeting. The engineer from Oak Lawn presented a number of the reasons for the cost changes. A lot of this was presented by an engineer, and so I'm really going to try to skip the technical stuff and just talk about the dollars a little bit. But this first slide will show essentially just in graphic fashion, I'm going to just blow through all this here, that now the cost estimates are at $216 million. And we'll over these next several slides, we'll get into some of the conversation about how that happened. So again, the original cost estimate, $171 million. We're currently at $216 million. A lot of this had to do with some of the current estimates didn't reflect some of the negotiations and cost increase due to ComEd, the Cook County Forest Preserves, and IDOT. So that was a $45 million increase. Getting to more of the nuts and bolts here. There was some approval delays with IDOT and the Forest Preserve District, and I think, as you can imagine, there's anytime you have a project that's expected to be completed in a year, and if it gets delayed 2-3 years, holding everything the same, you're just going to have increases because of inflation and labor increases. So that's a little bit of what happened here, but a lot of this had to do with some of the issues with other agencies. Some of the approvals from IDOT and the Forest Preserve District delayed it about 3 months. I will tell you the other communities, and when I started here, we were pretty heavily involved with the Forest Preserve District, and there was a number of delays and cost increase with the Forest District, well, I'll get into a little bit later. This shows, actually I don't know why it doesn't show on the slide, but there's the program schedule. Oh, it's another little thing I gotta click. Oh, wow. There you, wow. Okay. Yeah. All right.
Tree wow.
Guess I should have rehearsed this, right? Yeah, this shows the original versus the current program schedule. And as you can see, there's been delay in some of the projects, particularly the transmission main project is about almost 4 years behind. So that's one of the reasons for the cost increases. So I will tell you again, and this was the one I was most involved with, the Forest Preserve, again, I think what I talked about earlier, we were trying to avoid having the transmission made going down major highways through the southwest suburbs. That would have been very expensive, very disruptive to obviously traffic in the area. When the communities began approaching the Forest Preserve District, several years ago. It was amicable to discussions, but it became very apparent that the Forest Preserve District wanted some significant compensation for putting the line through the forest preserves. And I know there was a number of negotiations, there was meetings that the managers and mayors held with even some of the Cook County commissioners, who are also the commissioners of the Forest Preserve District. That wound up adding, between some of the things they were asking to do with ecological restoration, bike trails, license fees, added about $5 million to the project, and that was a significant decrease from what they were seeking. So, and there were some issues with the request to do tuttling to avoid forest preserve wetlands. There was also a number of issues with IDOT in terms of avoiding some of their bridge and conforming to some of their specifications. There was a couple spurs in Orland Park and Palos Park that had some alignment changes that added to the cost increase. Soil contaminations. There was some unexpected soil contaminations found after field investigations. That added, as you can see from this pie chart here, about $5.4 million. So there was also some, the engineering as a construction is less than the original planned cost, but it still is higher than what was expected because there was more work than was expected. And obviously the longer you have a project, the more the engineering is going to increase. So there's about a $4.3 million increase in engineering. There were some traffic control requirements imposed by IDOT and Cook County that added about $3.5 million. Sewer lining and relocation of sewers to meet the Illinois EPA standards added about $3.1 million to the project. So, I'd like to say that, that in summary, that's what the cost increases are, and I'd like to say that we expect that 214 will be it, but we cannot say that for sure at this point. So there are some potential additional cost increases for soil disposal to a clean construction and demolition debris facility, whether that will be allowed within the comment corridor. Whether IDOT and Cook County will allow us to do open cuts. The transmission main, because it's stretched out a number of years, we'll know in about a few years whether those project costs are going to hold. But again, a delay of 5 years just in inflation has the potential to add more cost than expected. Down here, there's some expectations that of additional easement and permitting costs from Common and Forest Preserve District that we hope is capped at that limit. And we're hoping that the labor and raw materials, the assumptions in the $214 million is that they will be at 3% per year. Obviously, if they exceed that, that also has the potential for adding to the cost. So, just a wrap up here. So, let me just tell you a little bit about the process really focused over the last year and a half. The other managers, I think, began to learn of these project cost increase about a year and a half ago. At that point, we did request additional information, which you now have on the reason for the cost overruns. While we were requesting that, there was the original bid package 4A that was significantly higher than the engineer's estimate. We asked them, the Oaklawn's engineer, to do some value engineering. They rebid it, and as a result of the rebidding, it came in $6.2 million under the original bid. So as we were doing that, and I think really looking at the cost overruns, we determined that the total project cost to date is still above the $171 million that we have the authority to approve. So this is when we kind of requested the meeting to review the increase in overall project cost. And one of the things that we felt at that point, frankly, because of concern about some of the cost increases, that the 5 communities needed kind of what I would call an outside engineer to kind of give us a third-party review of the construction engineering agreement. So we hired Christopher Burke and Associates, and they and Oaklawn's firm has worked very well with them, and we appreciate that. And that's really, I think, helped in reducing some of the additional cost. Christopher Burke was able to find about $3.5 million more from CDM's cost. So again, where we're at now with the total cost exceeding $171 million, we wanted to bring the mayors up to date, and which we did. And what you want to know, probably after all this stuff I just said, and probably what the residents want to know, what does this all really mean on water rates? Okay. So this is probably a fairly simple and straightforward chart, but this project, as it was initially considered, based on an average water user of 8,000 gallons per month, at the original cost of $171 million, that would have been about $127 per year for an average resident. At the $214 million, it's estimated to be about $153 per year. So that's how it affects the actual pocketbook. So going forward, presenting to municipal boards, and really what we're looking for today, and all the communities are in the process of doing this, I think we're the 3rd community doing this, is we're looking at the authority to move forward. And I will say, and I think all the communities agree, nobody is happy about these increases, in Oaklawn, and no one is. But there are significant benefits to our community in terms of safety, fire flow, pressure, that we need these improvements. And delaying them another few years, it's not going to get cheaper, it's going to get more expensive. So all the communities, I think, we're all recommending going forward, but we felt because this is such a big project and there's been some obvious, major changes to it, we wanted to make sure you are all up to date on it. So one of the things that we're working with Oaklawn on, and they've been open to this and cooperative, is that in the future we would work with them to approve all future bid packages. We would also get the ability to approve change orders, and that's something we're discussing with them, as well as construction management contracts. We're actually having discussions with Chris Burke actually Thursday of this week to see if they can assist us in that effort. And I think some ways to kind of improve the communication and oversight is that we're going to be requesting kind of additional information on change orders and expectations, and basically included in some of the construction management contracts going forward. So that's it, and be happy to entertain any questions. Kevin Borkowski and Tom Kapansky, for those of you who haven't met it, who's our water superintendent, have also been involved with this, and certainly Tom can talk to you about some of the technical side of this, or if there are any questions about, what does all this mean for us. But that's all I got.
I got a couple questions, guys. I don't disagree we need a redundant system. It's the life's blood of our community water. When is this, I see you got a couple numbers, though, on the effective water uses. And one shows the annual water bill increase, original cost, $127.81. When did that start, or when will that start?
Great question.
It's an increase from
the village treasurer and I have talked about this. We will need to come back to you. I think the goal would be to phase this in. Obviously, the improvements are not all happening at once, but we'll have to come back to you.
That cost is not going to.
Yeah.
It's not going to affect any of the participating municipalities all at one time. It's going to come in phases over time. But again, based on the original estimate and the financing of that project, versus what the costs are now, the difference is about a $25 a year impact.
Yeah, I see the spread. I'm just wondering kind of when it's coming, and I'm sure everybody's wondering when it's coming.
Yeah,
Is it
it's not going to
10
all of a
years
sudden
away,
show up in
5
3
years
months.
away, next month, you know?
No, the Oak Lawn is financing most of this construction through low-interest loans through the Illinois EPA. And the way those loans operate is, and they're getting approved in phases, thank you. So the debt service on each phase does not, the repayment of the loan does not start until after the project is completed and closed. So the first phase that they've borrowed money through the EPA has not yet closed. So it's going to be a couple of years yet. I think it's probably another year yet before that bond issue closes and we start the repayment phase. And it's a 20-year repayment. So each one of these phases of the project that are financed with the different IEPA loans will have different points in time in the future, at which point then the repayment starts to occur, and that's where the debt service comes to pay, that we will have to pay for that debt service.
So they've got like a construction loan. Once the house is built, whatever that portion is, then they'll start paying
Correct.
on it. And that would be transferred to us?
A portion of the overall debt will be shared by us, and is shared by the other communities. David mentioned the IDNR, Illinois Department of Natural Resources. They conduct a water allocation calculation about every 10 years. They update the calculations, and it's basically there's a consortium of the multi-states that abut to Lake Michigan as to how much each of the different states and the communities served by those lakes how much they can draw out of the straw and suck out of the lake.
Okay.
So so they put some limitations, and that's what those schedules are about. And using those allocation tables is how the debt service gets allocated amongst the communities.
Right, so, but this $127,000, or this $127 increase would have come either way. It's the extra 25 that we're talking about.
Right.
And I commend the mayor's managers, and I know Commissioner Yonker attended one of the meetings, for getting the engineer to kind of check their engineer's numbers and saving those big amounts of dollars. Has anybody tried to renegotiate? It sounds like the biggest cost overruns were because of the county, IDOT, and
Yes, to Oak Lawn's credit, they've worked very hard with Forest Preserve, with IDOT. Some of these could have been higher. I'll be honest, and it's.
Are the deals done, or those, is there a chance that's coming up? I'm guessing the cost to tap into the straw could go up, and we could.
It could.
You just want to have an idea of what's coming going forward.
Well,
I'm sure the taxpayers are going to want to know so they can plan in advance too.
As I said, this is bid package 4A. There's still more projects to come. So there are, as they say, some cost increases built in. As I mentioned, there's 3% cost factors, inflation factors. I think there's a potential could be higher than 214. I'm not gonna kid you. No.
Dave, these projected rates, they don't include the potential increase from Chicago to Oak Lawn for water, right? So they could go even higher.
These calculations are just
Just the construction.
The construction component. It does not account what Chicago is going to charge us.
And how often does Chicago, are they locked in per year, or could they fluctuate every year with an increase, or?
Chicago in recent years, Chicago went through a couple of phases where they did very significant increases for a 3 to 5 year period. And effective 2 years ago, they passed an ordinance that said June 1st of each year, the water rate would increase by the lesser of the rate of inflation or 5%. And a year ago, June was the first year that new formula came into play, and the CPI calculation that is used as the basis for that was negative, so there was no change. This year, it is a 1.8% change in the CPI, which translates to about a 7-cent increase that will become effective June 1st,
Is that per gallon?
per 1,000 gallons.
Per thousand?
Anybody else have any questions?
What's the direction? What are we directing?
Well, I
For you to
think is
continue
there-
your negotiations.
You don't need to vote, but is there general consensus to continue to move forward and keep the board informed? Yeah.
Everyone fine with that?
Yes.
We don't have a
Mayor.
choice really, but
Do we have a choice?
Well, I mean, yeah,
Take a well.
We don't want to pay. That's,
No,
just joking.
not a real
I mean,
good.
and really, that's your choice, is
Yeah,
you
yeah.
pull out of the agreement and you don't move forward with the
Start
the project.
drilling
And
for well
that,
water.
I think is
Yeah,
almost not possible.
Yeah, it's not.
okay. Number 6, discuss Hillwood incentive request.
Mayor Pro Tem, if I may, I believe that there is a representative from Hillwood here tonight, and then we also have representatives from First Baptist, if I'm not mistaken. Looking at our agenda, we have extremely heavy one this evening. I'd ask that if we could move item 11 up, so that the gentleman here could get home in a reasonable time. So if we could do the annexation for the First Baptist, move them up to item number 6, and then directly following that, we'll have Hillwood, the incentive request, if that's okay with the board.
Found it? Okay.
Appreciate it.
mind.
Very good. So
Discuss annexation with First Baptist Church. Paula, you want to talk about that?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm sure the pastor and his peers or councilmen there will be thankful. So this is located at 7025 179th Street. And the pastor approached us a little while ago requesting annexation. There had been some discussions with the county, and he said he preferred to come into the village and connect onto the village's utilities. So we've been working with him to get the annexation agreement in shape, as well as this plat of annexation. We got the plat of annexation just this week. That's off being reviewed. And the annexation agreement is fairly simple. We had done an inspection of the property and found various code deficiencies. The agreement allows them 6 months to bring those up. And then he has the connection to the utilities. He's got 3 years. And then he has the fire alarm system. He has 3 months. Impact fees have been calculated at $27,415, but any kind of development costs related to 179th Street, that will be incumbent upon the redevelopment of the property. The term of the agreement is 20 years. And Pastor is here to answer any questions you may have.
Anybody have any questions of the pastor?
I'd just like to say something.
Sure.
by all means, Pastor.
I'm grateful to be a part of Tinley Park. I've known about Tinley Park since '75 and have had connections gradually a little bit, but the last 10 years I've been here. And what a privilege to be a part of a progressive community. And we're grateful to be here. And I just want all of you to know, you're welcome to come and visit us. But what I'm really going to want you to remember is this. We're here to serve. We're not here to get, we're here to give. We're a serving community. We're a serving family of church. And so we're not here to see what we can get out of you. We're here to work. And so we want you to call on us. We're here to give this community a boost, and we want it to be a better place. I have been so grateful to watch this community grow. When I came in 1975, it was a very small community. There wasn't a lot here. I didn't see a lot, but in the next few years it began to grow. And I commend you for that and say that we want to be a part of the growth. We want to be a part of making it go. We're sorry that every time we turn around, somebody wants another 10,000, 20,000, 50,000. But you know, we serve a God that isn't short. He has supplied, and He will. So please feel free to call on us, anything that we can do. And we thank you. We want to be a part of the village. This is home to us. I thought I was when I came, and then I found out, no, you're unincorporated. I said, well, we won't be long, I hope. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
Council.
Go ahead, Council.
Yeah, just, again, for the process, might be some of your guys' first time seeing an annexation agreement in a few weeks. What meeting do we have it set for? Paul? Public hearing? Public hearing? What meeting do we have it set for?
The June 6th.
Okay, so by state law, so again, your job here will be to review this agreement, again, ask us any questions that you have it, ultimately approve, this plat of annexation in the agreement. We have to have a public hearing. This board has to have a public hearing before that happens. Anytime you get an annexation agreement, you have to have a public hearing. So you'll see that June 6th. Again, I wouldn't expect a lengthy public hearing. Usually those are set either as part of your meeting, or if you're meeting that night at 7:30, we might set it for 7:20 that night. So if you see that, that's where this is coming from. And again, that'll be publicly noticed, and that's why there's the lag time.
And right after the annexation, we'll follow that with a plat of consolidation, because there are 2 lots there, and we have a minimum 2-acre requirement for churches. So we recognize that they're slightly under that, and that's recognized in the agreement.
Thanks, Trustee.
Any other questions? Thank you. Discuss Hillwood incentive request.
Pat, can you take that, Pat?
Sure. This is going to be at 18604 Ridgeland. It's right next to M Block, which is a million square foot facility. What we're seeing right now is logistics boom down in Will County. You're going to see a lot more logistics centers going down there, distribution centers. This is an opportunity for us to have one here in the Cook County side. And the reason for this, it was actually approved back in 2006, but we talked to the assessor at Cook County, Ira, and we're getting to know him pretty well, and he recommended going ahead and just going through the process again. And so what we have here is an $18 million facility, and it's 300,000 square feet. And what it's going to do is it's a way for us to combat the 18% Cook County property tax rate compared to Will County's 10% tax rate, and it's going to take it down from a 25% down to what residential is at 10%. And we have Connor Desmond here that can help answer any questions as well.
Go ahead.
Two quick ones. First, is there any infrastructure besides the building you're putting in? Do you have to put in pylons or anything? Is it swampland or anything like that, or?
I don't believe any pylons will be necessary. There will be some detention ponds to ensure that stormwater runoff is properly managed at the site. Otherwise, I'm not aware of any structural installments other than the parking and circulatory roads required for the operation of the site.
Okay, and then I'm guessing for staff in 06, they did the but-for test and certified all that?
Yes.
When they did it?
Yeah.
The only other thing I've got is this living wage ordinance. I see you've got to sign an affidavit now that you comply with that as part of the application. I don't think that was probably there in 06, was it?
That's a new requirement.
Yeah, that's that new requirement that came before the board a couple months ago. And that's, any problems with that, Pat? Do you know?
I'm sorry, what was that, Mike?
Well, there's now, for the Class 8, they got to do that. Remember that living wage ordinance that came up a couple months ago?
Yeah,
That's now part of the Class 8 application.
Right, so maybe for Class 8, and just so everybody knows how that worked, and Pat explained it well, it's a property tax incentive given by the county. What the applicant is here to ask you, the county won't, and there's an application process they have to fill out, the county board vets it, all that stuff, but the county board won't take it unless, the municipality passes a resolution of support. So there'll be a couple findings in that resolution, and basically says we support this. A few months back, this board passed an ordinance essentially stating that it was not following Cook County's recently passed minimum wage ordinance and things like that. We opted out of that. The way the county works is they're going to say to companies like this and say, we understand what your board has passed and things like that, but if you're getting a Class 8, if we're giving you a property tax rebate, there are certain things we're going to want. So again, there's not a lot we can do. That's going to be between the private business and the county. We can still go forward. The process is still going to be the same for them. They're going to need your resolution of support. But I think that is one of the county is, as this minimum wage ordinance is kind of getting bigger and bigger, and that's one of the ways the county's looking at it. They're kind of saying, if you're going to get a Class A, we're going to require you to do that. But again, that has nothing to do with you up here or anything we can do about that. They can't go forward to the county at all, and there's certain exceptions to that. They might apply. I don't
Correct.
know.
We actually apply under one. We are not
There you
required
go.
to follow we are not required to follow the living wage in this circumstance because we are not
I think that
owner-occupied
answers
society.
Yeah.
And
So
I
again,
appreciate
your
you.
job is whether you support it or not.
Okay.
They're sophisticated enough to work with the
And
county on that.
then the final question I had is, that this is a logistics facility, so trucking in and out, the jobs would be forklift drivers and that type of stuff?
Most likely, they have not identified a tenant at this time. They're expecting it either be a logistics or a distribution facility. They're hoping for possible manufacturing jobs as well, but as of right now, they have no tenant identified for the site.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
And then just add, with the Class A, Rich Township is an area of Cook County that is pre-approved for Class 8, which basically means if once we approve the incentive, the county will basically rubber stamp. They don't have to go through a
Good point,
separate
Brad.
vetting with the county.
Good point.
And Hillwood recently submitted plans for this building, so it's under review right now.
And I think unless there's an objection, I think the idea would be to put this before you for Tuesday night, a week from tonight.
Yes.
And if I may, Board, the applicant, Hillwood, actually cannot activate this incentive until someone physically moves into the site and construction is complete. So this, even if you guys approve it this month, it'll still take some time before construction is complete and the incentive goes into effect. I know that's a concern for many municipalities in terms of the timing of when the incentive goes into effect.
Appreciate
Okay.
it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brian, before you consider, Madam Clerk, make sure you have for the record that Trustee Glass had to step out for the remainder of the evening, and he was stepped out at 8:46 p.m.
So noted.
Okay, number 7, discuss Primal Cut parking lease agreement. Paula, is this yours?
Yeah, this is Primal Cut. They've had some concerns despite having a valet service that they needed some additional parking. There are 6 spaces right there on the east side of our public safety building, Fire Station 1. So they're requesting a lease agreement with that. There is no defined rate that we've used in the past, but between looking at other rental agreements that they're doing, like for the valet, as well as a couple prior agreements, we came up with $150 per month for the 6 spaces, and the applicant has agreed to that.
Is there a need for, I mean, do we need that space, or is it?
This is just from 4 to 10, I believe it was.
4 to 9.
9 o'clock, is it not? Yeah, 9 o'clock. 7 days a week. So during the day, it would be open.
So it's pretty much after business hours?
This hours, it coincides with their hours.
Are they going to make it valet or something, or what's the
They're
thought?
doing valet now, and the valet parking is using the church parking lot, the First Methodist Church parking lot. I think this is for people that are frequenting the restaurant. It'll be signed for Primal Cut only.
Do we charge the neighbors across the street for parking?
Those are on their own property. Are you talking about N. Joe's?
Yeah, isn't that a village-owned lot?
That is, no, it's the village, it's owned by N. Joe's, just like Holstein's. And so the village went into an agreement where we participated in making improvements to their property so that they would allow some public parking, and then in exchange, we gave them some private parking.
But
Same with Holstein's.
We maintain the parking lot, correct? Snow plowing?
Holstein's, same scenario in Holstein's, do they own their own private parking as well?
It's their property.
And then
There is no property except right behind Primal Cut there that they own.
they don't own the actual roadway.
They do.
So the only property that the village
Owns
owns
is a
are
parking
the
space.
6 spots.
Yep.
So
That's all.
hypothetically speaking,
There's a couple
they
more
could,
spaces there.
so hypothetically speaking, they could actually block off that access.
I've
that
never
egress,
researched
regress.
it, and, would hope that we would have had some cross-access easement there, but I've not researched the title.
So the area that's in green around the public safety building, that's what the village has control of?
Yes, kind of where I put the
rest
red
is-
circle. There's more than 6 spaces there, they just want 6.
What about all these other spots along the train tracks? That's
Holstein's.
Oh, that's Holstein's.
Wow. Oh, so
Some of
it
that's
was-
Metra,
Okay.
some of it's Holstein's.
Why does valet need to be right in front when someone else is parking your car?
Why is what?
Why does valet need to park right there when someone else is parking your vehicle?
They don't use that for parking for valet. It's staging, so when someone comes in, drops off the car, then they take that car.
Oh, it's like a placeholder.
Right, and then they
Okay.
move the car over to the First Methodist Church.
Is, the only other question I got, is there a time on this lease? I mean, if we
It's a
need it-
year.
Okay, good. Just in case we ever sell the building.
It could be
or whatever.
terminated
Okay.
anytime.
I would, certainly this is the board's decision, and I would just, although $150 seems to be a minimal amount, I would take into account that it's a new business. They invested a substantial amount of money into their adventure, and they're a small business, and right now $1,800 a year annually for them could make or break them, believe it or not. Does it make or break the village? I don't believe so. I think it would be a nice, decent way for us to show that we actually want them to succeed and not charge them a dollar amount for 6 spots, particularly when they own basically right up to the beginning of them. So certainly up to the board's decision. I appreciate the fact that Paula put some time into trying to give us some analysis on that. I would just caution us to try to be business friendly in this position.
Jake, if I may, the history of both this area around the public safety building and to the north behind Ed and Joe's was to create kind of a municipal parking area. And as Paula noted, with Ed and Joe's and two adjacent property owners, we entered into agreements with the owner to create a cross-access easement and an agreement whereby we made improvements to the parking lot and maintain that parking lot, plow it and so forth. But because it is their property, we did allow them to have a certain number of spaces that were earmarked specifically for their individual businesses. But by and large, we designed that to be a municipal parking lot. The same thing that we tried to do here behind what was formerly Bogart's, now Primal Cut, and Holstein's, was to create this whole area as a municipal lot. What's at issue here is that they want to have these spaces earmarked specifically for them.
I'm pretty clear to that, and I think this speaks to a much larger issue throughout the town with parking and how we classify certain areas to park and not be able to park in. I don't know if we have record of it, but I seem to remember there at some point when it was maybe the old Bogarts that it was actually, there was signs there that said it was Bogart parking only, carry out only, Bogart parking only.
I think they did have a couple spaces marked that way.
Okay. I would just ask the board to consider that we have a new business before us and they're trying to make it and not try to hold them over the fire. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, number 8, garbage code amendment. Steve?
This has been this particular portion, thank you very much, Patrick. Particular portion of the village code has been subject to some litigation against the village for approximately the last 2 years as part of a larger piece of litigation. The relevant portion here tonight that I'll get into the detail has since been dropped, but in essence this goes back to 1990. Two specific pieces of village history that are relevant to this. In 1990, the village adopted ordinance 90-0053, which established the first municipal recycling program in the village. That was a very common piece of action that a lot of communities in the state of Illinois were taking at that point in time to encourage recycling in their communities. And part of that recycling program required whoever the village's refuse contractor, which by default is also the company that picks up the village's recycling from our residents, to basically gather that material, weigh it, get a value for it, and then remit those proceeds back to the village. So that's kind of point number one. Point number two is in 1990, actually at the same village board meeting, the village approved a contract, a 3-year contract for a refuse carrier. And part of that contract with that carrier said in lieu of the refuse provider weighing those materials and then sending the proceeds back to the village. The village would accept a $10,000 annual payment in lieu of the weighing. So it was, again, in lieu of that process that was outlined in the recycling ordinance.
So wait, there's a contractual provision that said they're going to pay an amount in lieu of that?
Yes.
When did that come in?
1990. So that was between 1990 and 1993. In 1993, the village again competitively bid a refuse contract. At that point in time, the company that was awarded the contract had a similar provision. The dollar amount increased from $10,000 to $12,000, but it was the same concept. So in that contract, for an annual payment of $12,000, that was in lieu of the refuse carrier needing to do the weighing and remitting of the proceeds back to the village. Fast forward till 2001, and every contract from 1993 to 2001, that same $12,000 proceed was in the contracts. In 2001, there was a change in the village's contract that now, in lieu of the $12,000 payment, the contractor would provide recycling carts to all village residents. Previously, they would provide them, but the village itself paid for those and paid a sum of, if I recall correctly, about $16,000 to the contractor to provide annually a recycling cart to each of the residents. So that provision has been in where the contractor has provided the recycling cart, now in lieu of the $12,000 payment, and every contract the village has had until up and including the present contract. I'm going to stop there for a second. Everybody kind of on board with where that's at in terms of history?
Yes.
So the subject of the litigation was that the village was due money from our contractor going back to 1990 because they did not remit the proceeds from the recycling to the village. Again, that was a subject of litigation. The case has been dismissed as, attorney's words, the village, in a sense, waived the provisions of our code because we had alternative language in each of our refuse contracts that said the contractor would either pay that annual payment or, again, from 2001 on, would accept the contractor having the recycling bins to each of our residents. So that's the history. In a nutshell, what this proposed amendment does is just removes the portion of the village code that was a subject of that litigation and is basically a housekeeping or a cleanup, because unless the board would want to move back kind of to that provision, obviously that would be the board's right in any future contract. We have not utilized that provision. This would remove the provision that the contractor needs to have that weighing of the materials and remitting the proceeds back to the village. So it's striking out that language in the village code.
This is a direct result of litigation?
Yes. I mean, the village became aware of the conflict due to litigation. And it was the recommendation of the attorney representing the village that we should not make this change to the code until after that litigation was resolved.
Any questions?
Do you know when that contract's up?
When does this contract expire?
2019.
2019.
This contract is old as my child, and has not been bid out by anyone on the previous board.
I guess I would say this, as far as the code, again, the cleanup, taking that out is fine. I mean, you're gonna go out, what happened in the past is one thing. If you want it to go forward, when you rebid this contract in whatever, in 2018, as you approach 2019, if that's something you want, put it in the bid specs, that you can handle it then. Doesn't need to be in the code, you can, if this is something you want, but, it doesn't need to be in the code if that's what you want.
The only concern I've got, I know we've got that environmental commission. This is the type of issue that they might be concerned about, especially to make sure that there's actually compliance with the passing out of the recycling bins. And I know they've talked about some of the townhouse complexes don't get them.
That's part of the contract where the townhouses don't have to, they could be on their own.
I'm just saying maybe remit it to them to get their input on it. I mean, if the contract overrides the code, I just hate to take something away that makes a more green community, without looking at it.
I don't think it's directly going to relate to that, but in this particular contract, right?
We don't do it.
One's a contract, one's a code, though. The code says we're a green community, we recycle. And our contractor remits us a portion of the money for the recycling. Or is it just the money we're changing?
It's just the money.
It's just the money.
They're
Okay.
still recycling. It's, whether they weigh it, it should come back to the village, or I guess the flip side of the theory would be, well, we gave you a better bid price because we're keeping that money. I mean, and whether what's happened in the past, I don't know. I wasn't involved in the case. I'm just saying that would be the theory. We get to keep that money, therefore we get to charge your residents, $18 a month instead of 22. I think that's the rationale.
This is basically just not to expect there to be a recycled dollar amount given back to the village over the course of the next year and a half.
Correct, and
Correct?
as Pat indicated, of course, the board could do whatever it wanted at the next contract. You could put in whatever you wanted in terms of any bid specs, in terms of if you wanted to change that program, if you wanted to reinstall where the contractor actually needed to weigh the material and rebid the proceeds, that could be a bid requirement. That any company that wanted to bid for Tinley Park had to agree that they would do that, that they were awarded the contract. I mean, that's
I'm a
just one
little
scenario.
confused on it. Let me just understand one part. So initially, we were supposed to get 12,000, but in 2001, I thought I heard you say through this that they charged us per year for the recycling bins, but now we're not getting charged that?
I can explain that to you. So,
Right, so I mean,
sure.
we were getting 12,000, but we were paying 16,000.
That is correct. So what we were doing is we were directly getting $12,000 for, in essence, the value of the recycling. But while the contractor was also delivering to each of our residents a recycling container, the contractor was charging the village for that.
Right.
So 12,000 in, not necessarily an in and an out,
Right.
but the village was paying approximately $16,000 to the contractor to provide that service to the residents. In terms of that service, meaning delivering the refuse containers.
So from 2001 till now, we're not paying for those?
We are not, but we are also no longer receiving the $12,000 payment.
Okay.
It's a trade-off, and this is really simply to have the ordinance language match
I
what
get
the
it.
contract.
Hey, I just wanted to make sure.
Right.
That I'm totally
In
comfortable.
retrospect, this was kind of boilerplate language when they put the ordinance together and didn't get quite in review that it should have been removed because the contract ultimately that they entered into didn't
And
have.
going back to them now with 1 year left on the contract, I mean, it just, to me, I think it makes sense just to continue.
One other question. Anybody contact the attorney who filed the suit? I think his whole motivation was try to get the village money that he thought under the code it was owed. Is he okay with this, or has anybody talked to him?
Pat, jump in if I don't want to speak for him. He has agreed to drop his suit.
That part I get. I'm just wondering if he's okay with this.
I haven't talked to him.
I'd hate to see new litigation come or criticism about this change potentially being seen as helping the contractor that's been around. Maybe, I don't know, I'd like to get his thoughts on it, if that's possible.
Any other questions? No. If not, 9, discuss awarding contract Bannis pedestrian bridge.
Jennifer or Kevin can take that one.
On April 6th, bids were received for the Bannis Elementary School pedestrian bridge. This is a pedestrian bridge that goes to the school, obviously, and it's 100% funded through a legislative earmark. So the village has no skin in the game on this one. It's a free bridge. MYS Incorporated from Palos Heights was the low bidder in the amount of $142,0810. They are IDOT pre-qualified for up to $21 million in work, which is required because of the funding. And the plan is, if the village awards the project, that the bridge will be delivered when school is out and put in before school gets back in. They do use union labor. I know that was a question that came up. And they've done several projects in 2016. One of the trustees noticed that they didn't have anything listed on their website, simply a matter of just not updating their website. They currently have over $1 million in projects ongoing with IDOT right now.
The other thing we added on there too, we're also adding public sidewalk that didn't exist before on the north side of the bridge, connect to our other sidewalks for connectivity. Walking the students on public sidewalk instead of just through the parking lot or a field. So they actually got a sidewalk. We got an easement approved by the board a couple meetings ago. So it's all included in the project, and they're paying for all that together.
And the aesthetics of the bridge are very similar to the bridge on 172nd Street near Fulton School.
The one that used the bridge in the past, I commend the staff and everybody else for finding the grants and getting us prepared for this. There was moments in my life where I thought that I wasn't going to make it across. So it's good
They will
to
be
see.
sturdier
It's good for the kids.
and look much better.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Number 10, discuss demolition bids for 17226 Oak Park Avenue. Steve, you want to talk about that?
Thank you very much. This is for, as Trustee Yonker indicated, the demolition of 17226 Oak Park Avenue, which is the former Rogers Hair Care facility. The village went out to bid earlier this year. Bid opening on May 1. As typically is the case for our demos, we received a good number of bids, 5 in this particular case. They're listed in the staff memo. The low bidder in this case was KLF Enterprise, who has done some work in the village. Last year we had 3 buildings that were demoed. They were awarded one of those as they were the low bidder. Per some additional requests from the elected officials, we have also verified that KLF, we've got copies of certified payroll, that they are paying prevailing wages, things of that nature. As you can see from the bids, they are definitely a low bidder. They are approximately $12,000 lower than the second place bidder. Staff does not have a reason to not find them as a non-responsive bidder and would recommend them for the bid for this one for 17226 Oak Park Avenue.
Are we going to put a timeline on that? I think they were kind of late in the game demoing the previous 2 buildings.
That is correct. Part of that, I think, I will take a hit for that. First demos that I had done last kind of go around and identified some lessons learned in terms of ways to speed up the process, the disconnects from the utilities, ComEd, NICOR, things of that nature. Those are already done. But specifically to your point, Trustee Yonker, they were the slowest out of the 3 contractors last time getting the Cook County hazardous material, primarily asbestos, and also their demo permit. We are aware that it's a priority for the board, and we'll be on them to make sure they're sticking with the timeline.
Yeah, Trustee Yonker, I think it's a good point. We'll put a start date, we'll put it all right in the contract, because I know they're taking down Lincoln Mall, and they just started that, so they're around, they're in the neighborhood, but we should make sure our project is also top of the list, so it's a great point.
Mr. Yonker as well. I'd like to discuss the remnants of the site afterwards. If I remember correctly from last year, some of our demo sites, there were some that were seeded properly and grown to a satisfactory level, and some that are not, and I believe it was this demolition company that was the one that's not. Is that something that we could follow through to make sure that we're not looking at ragweed and dandelions for months?
I think we spec'd it pretty specific.
That was
we learned a lot about seeding.
And that's, I hope you did.
Unfortunately.
I just make sure that we emphasize that as well.
Understood.
I mean, it is on Oak Park Avenue.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
And obviously, and Counselor, we've got obviously the okay for the county. It's all squared away for.
Yep, it's court approved, it's ready to go.
Okay.
Appreciate all your work, guys.
Do we have time for like a quick update on Clark? Anything new?
There was a status hearing on the 5th, wasn't there?
There's nothing new, Mike. I think we've got two of the potential claimants that are in. They still have time for some other ones. We share your frustration on the process, but with these, anyone who has a lien or potential claim on the property, they get a chance to get notice, and judges are usually a little more lenient on giving them chances than a regular ticket or something like that. I mean, it's potentially their business or something that you could be knocking down. So we're hoping, we've got alias summons out. We're hoping that the next court date we'll get to go ahead, do a default if the right parties don't get it.
Thanks.
12, discuss appointment of Mayor Pro Tem for the 2017-18 fiscal year. Mr. Mayor.
You want to take that?
Sure.
I believe everybody received in their packet the village codes and ordinances relating to what the village the village mayor pro tem is. And for the unforeseeable departure of myself for natural or otherwise unnatural circumstances.
Designated survivor.
Designated survivor.
There is a process in place to continue the wonderful government in Tinley Park, and this previous year, underneath Mayor Dave Seaman, Trustee Brian Yonker was appointed as Mayor Pro Tem. I thought he did a satisfactory job. Several meetings could have been expedited more expeditiously if he would have ran it on a better note. But no, it would be my recommendation to continue that Brian continue to be the mayor pro tem at the board's blessing. And I'd ask that we could get that on the agenda for Tuesday, and then we would run that for the annual, make it until May of 2018. Unless there's any further discussion on that, I'd ask for you guys to consider that.
I'd second the idea. He runs a good meeting.
Well, sometimes.
All righty, thank you.
You willing to take on the challenge, Brian?
Sure, with the pay increase. Number 13, discuss committee structure.
Yeah, that's going to fall to me as well. Again, this was something that you should have received in your packet. You know, after sitting on the board for 2 years as a trustee and being a chairman of a committee and co-chairman of God knows how many other committees, part of our transition into the office for me was to look at our committee structure and how we as elected officials could best fit the staff and certainly down into the commissions and then obviously the residents. There was a couple of key areas that I thought that we could certainly use a little refresh in, certainly in reference to the workload and specifically kind of what the village is requiring now. The two committees that I'm suggesting that stay the same, obviously, be Public Works and then Public Safety. Obviously, those are pretty key areas of Tinley or municipalities in general, and I don't see that there's any need to change those. That being said, I believe that the other committees do. So just a reclassification of what their responsibilities are, and then obviously titling as well. So we had a Finance Committee previously. I'm asking that the old Budget, Audit, and Administration Committee be disbanded, and then we take some of the roles of the Budget and Audit and implement it into the Finance Committee. That basically, would it be everything that comes out of the Treasurer's office would go right to Finance. So that, I think that makes sense on a workload, and it's all kind of located in one committee category. As for, in the past year, we've obviously reclassified community development and made that a director position with economic development, building and planning and zoning underneath that community development. In this proposal, I am suggesting that we continue to have planning and zoning, building into that one committee as community development. We would not be incorporating economic development in community development, but otherwise it would be in what I would classify as a new one as economic development and marketing. Two areas of the town that I see to be in need of some strong attention on our behalf, something that I think we should focus on for the future. So those two categories would be focused into one committee. What was my other one? Oh, administration and legal, pardon me. So in place of the old budget, audit, and administration, I'm suggesting that we create an administration and legal, which would oversee the organization, reorganization of all of our administration and village governments, monitor any federal and state legislation, administrative regulations towards our village, oversee all HR related activities, and then as well as make periodical reviews and make recommendations to the village board for any ordinances or code provisions. So these are a couple of the suggestions that I'm making to the board. It does require board action to reclassify these, and it would be drafted in an ordinance form. A lot of time and effort was put into this. There's certainly a lot of change, and I want to, say to the staff, and I know that this is going to be a little different than what you're used to. Everything up here is different, so we ask that you try to form and move along with us. Certainly if there's problems or questions, anything that pops up as we move along with this, just to let us know. Should I talk about the schedule of committee as well? Is that probably the right time to do so? It will be. Yeah. So What this government's been used to, obviously we have 2 village board meetings a month. In between that, we would have a committee of the whole, kind of like what we're doing this evening. In this proposal, what I'm suggesting is that we still continue our first and third formal village board meeting. We would make committee of the whole meeting as a quarterly meeting of the entire board. And then on the off nights, the off Tuesdays of the month, so the second and fourth Tuesday of the month, we would have 3 committee meetings on one Tuesday, and then 3 other committee meetings the fourth Tuesday of the month. So ultimately, what we're looking at as a collective whole, 4 meetings a month for calendaring, I guess, with the scheduling. What it does, I believe, and a level of transparency, what that's doing is scheduling out. Obviously, it'd be scheduled that we have 3 meetings or 3 committees meeting on this certain Tuesday each month. It's set for a designated time. So for the optics of it, I think it opens up those lines of communication with the residents, making it more available for them. It's also giving the committee members, the new chairs of these committees, the opportunity to really dig down and dig into their actual committee and make them accountable and responsible for knowing everything about it. How it would work, obviously, is you have 3 committees, you'd have 3 different chairs. Instead of being co-chairs of other committees that are on another night, you're just going to be co-chairing and being the quorum for that evening for that other committee. I think that pretty much covers all of that. Anything I'm missing, Counselor? Pat and I worked on this together.
No, I thought you explained it well. Just a couple points. Remember, so the committee structure, they're your committees, so it's got to work for you, and how you want to get your business up to the full board and how you want to vet them. So I think if you guys are okay with this structure as we talk about tonight, you will see it in an ordinance format. There'll be probably some other areas in that ordinance we'll have to tweak. For example, along with committees, you have liaisons. If we want to keep that idea, so that we now have community development department, I don't even know what the liaison would say. So we'd have to, as your chairman, you'd also be liaison. We'd probably have to tweak that a little bit to make sure they actually fit. And I believe the idea would be, I know as we did the other night, we saw there were some items on a consent agenda, for routine items that you as a committee, would approve unanimously up to the board. I think the idea would be to have those on the consent agenda, so you'd see that little tweak in the ordinance as well. If it's, I just want to reiterate, if it's on the consent agenda, can it be pulled off the consent agenda? Absolutely, without a problem. So I think it's a pretty creative system. I know the manager, the mayor, and some staff were involved in it. Because I think it's been hard on staff sometimes, because there is a system, there has been a system in the village where, to get to the board, it had to go through committee. So sometimes you guys probably saw them, and I know the trustees that are here, before your 7:30 meeting, you'd have a 7:20 committee. It's not a lot of time to vet them. So, and I know something we've taught, especially as the attorney, has to prepare a lot of this stuff for you, and your staff prepares 98% of it. Even with this committee, it's not going to be perfect all the time. If there may be times where the public works, you need something on an agenda. So I think you got to allow some flexibility for that. It's not always going to work perfectly where the items you need for your next full board meeting happen to be the finance, community development, and public safety committee. Just keep that in mind. There's going to be, the manager's going to need, and the mayor, and there's going to be circumstances that you're going to have to allow some things on your agenda that didn't come out of committee. But I think for your routine stuff, the things that keep the village going, I think it's a pretty efficient system.
I'm okay with the concepts of some streamlining of the committees. I've got a couple questions. The committee of the whole, that's today's meeting. This is where I get an update of everything that's going on in all the committees, and I like to have that before something's on the agenda, so I'm kind of familiar going in with what's going on. You're talking about doing that quarterly now, or?
Correct.
And then for our budget audit and administration committee, we had a couple leftover items on that. I know we talked about either a audit, what do you call it, an independent audit person, or that fraud assessment thing that was kind of going. And I think we wrapped up the ethics stuff. Is that all done? Is there anything else that was left loose? I know they handle
there's the
personnel decisions. Yeah, the pay study, the state, there's a few things that need to be wrapped up too, so.
I think go to the new admin.
Yeah, I mean, you could put that, you could certainly, you put that in the administration and legal. I mean,
Right.
Or you could do it in the committee of the whole too, just everybody.
Well, I mean, Mike, I
have
think
input on it.
as the counselor pointed out, this isn't, this might be an efficient manner, it might not be the best fit. I feel that it is. But you could certainly continue to have a committee of the whole that's going to require at least one more meeting a month. So if the board is open and willing to meeting on a separate night than a Tuesday, I would listen to your comments on that.
I think when we started, it was kind of an as-needed committee of the whole. And like tonight, it was as needed for sure, but you know what I mean? I kind of like that system for the committee of the whole.
I would add this, so if you put it quarterly, okay, nothing stops you from saying, we need a committee of the whole, call it. You know, you just have to follow up and meet, 48 hours, that's what you need. You can do that.
Certainly. Any other comments on that? The structure? Are we okay with that?
Make
Yes.
assignments?
So yeah, I mean, I had, thanks Brian for reminding me. I have put a little thought into who I believe should start chairing some of these committees. Would be my recommendations. I'm certainly open to conversation over it. I feel comfortable with with Brian still managing and chairing Public Works. I think he's done an exceptional job with that.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Satisfactory?
Kevin, you're welcome. You're happy now, right? With Trustee Panito, I think your experience on the board so far, you do, and your experience in your daily routine and your occupation leads you towards more of the public safety side. I'd ask that if you would consider chairing that. Trustee Brady, I'm looking to you for administration and legal. Our newest member of the board, appointed member, Mike Mangan, I'd ask that you chair the finance committee. I think your background fits that best. Trustee Berg, Cindy, I'd ask that you take up the economic development and marketing
Thank
committee.
you.
And last but not least, Mike Glotz, who had to leave for work, I'd ask that he take over the community development committee. So building and planning and zoning for him. These are my recommendations. They're open for conversation. If you have anything to add to it, if you think that you'd like to look at a different committee, let me know on that. But I would believe that's appointment for those, right? Those need to be appointed.
Those will be appointed.
So if there's no further conversation on it, I would move to place that on the board for next Tuesday to appoint you to those specific committees.
Do you know which one, which three you're going to have together? So who's on the other committees?
I don't have that. Do you have the original breakdown of what?
In terms of which ones we're going to group together?
Yeah, I think it worked out nice the first day I had it written out. I don't know if I have that somewhere on my desktop, but
I think I have it on my desk.
I'll take a look at it and we'll get back to that.
Just so if we're going to be voting on these changes in the committees, could we also put the proposed meeting dates? I don't think that's in writing here anywhere that I saw. Maybe I missed it.
Tuesdays.
Well, I mean, yeah, certainly.
That's what we were just asking, yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
which
know you,
three are
I know
gonna
you
be on
mentioned
which
it
day?
earlier,
Yeah.
thinking about quarterly or whatever. I don't think I see it in here.
It's not part of the memo that you probably have.
Right.
I still haven't gotten to the point of figuring out what committees would be meeting on. The goal here is to try to keep it for the Tuesdays of the month. I think we're all pretty much blocked those out anyways, and this would probably be a nice opportunity to kind of continue with that formality.
Any other questions regarding committees? If not, comments from the floor. Anyone wish to address the board? Please step to the podium.
I just want to say, wow, you guys really do care about this community, so thank you. I have been having problems with my water bill. Last summer, there was a They spray painted locate out in front of my house. And across the street, they had dug up a huge chunk the size of a car. So I called and I said, well, maybe this is why my water bill had gone from $200 to $400. And they said no. So my bill kept getting $400. Well, last month it was $608.50. So I was frantic. So I called and they were wonderful. They were helpful. They said, we'll send a guy out. The man came out. He replaced my meter. And he said it was broken and that give it about 2 weeks, call and we might get a refund. Well, I called and they said there was no proof that the meter was broken, but there was no proof that we did not use that water. They said because we have 4 people in the house. I've had 4 people in my house since the day I've owned my house. So I was just wondering if you guys could maybe look into it for me. It's a lot of money. My husband and I are both disabled. We're on a fixed income. So I just was hoping you guys could maybe do something for me.
Sure, if we could get your address to Kevin here and/or Tom, and
I remember you working out. You worked out at Tinley Park Fitness when you were a young boy.
It was a lot skinnier back then.
When you were still a young boy, but I remember you.
Is that the same Brian Yonker?
Is this pick on Brian Yonker Day, or?
Oh, Ken.
At the gym?
That's got to be the best compliment he's ever had.
I think you were in high school, so it was a long time.
A couple years ago.
Yeah. But thank you. You guys really, I'm impressed. Like back here, I was really impressed, but everyone, you really do care about this community, so thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks for listening.
Thanks for waiting around for our long meeting this evening.
Thank you.
Anyone else? If not, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Seconded.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Yeah.